What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe. What about Trevor Penning? Because to me, the offensive line is the big question mark on maybe this team right now. I mean, in terms of things that will really decide which direction the season's going to go. And then you look at the line, maybe no more important position than left tackle. And yes, first round overall pick, but, you know, a guy from a small school, kind of a relative project, and then one who catches a Liz Frank injury at the worst possible time. A lot of that does not feel good, Ross.
Yeah, it's concerning, especially when you're talking about, one of these bigger guys dealing with lower body injuries. That's always, got its own stigma and everything around it. But look, this is a New Orleans Saints team that, much like its secondary last year in terms of the intended starting five of the secondary, if you assume that Trevor Penning was to be the starting left tackle at the beginning of the season last year, which, as things went on before the dislocated toe injury against the Chargers early on in the preseason, it looked like maybe it was trending towards that direction. It would mean that if you assume that that's correct, that the New Orleans Saints never played a single game last year with their starting five on their offensive line, including Trevor Penning missing the first 12 weeks and the final weeks, because then you go on from that to, lose Eric McCoy for a stretch of games, lose Cesar Ruiz for a stretch of games. Andres Pete missed 5 games sprinkled in and all these other things. And so, I think that that's such a big piece to the success of this offensive line is where's your anchor and who are the guys that are going to be able to stay on the field? So health is such a big question mark across the trenches over on the offensive side. But if Trevor Penning is able to stay healthy, they consider him, they see sky's the limit for him. They consider him the starter of the future at the position. He's just got to be able to stay on the field. And this is a relatively new development for him. So hopefully it's something he'll be able to bounce back from. We watched Taysom Hill come back and play a full season off of a Liz Frank injury, but we have to consider the difference in body type, the difference in, how they're using their body. Yeah, exactly. What they're using those feet for, all these other things. So I think there's a lot of different metrics there, but there is something hopeful to say in terms of, okay, we watched that happen. And Trevor Penning won't be alone because Cesar Ruiz will be returning from, a foot injury of a similar kind as well. And so I think both of those guys are ones that you're going to want to watch along with the rest of the offensive line to just see if they can stay healthy in the first place.
Ross, the tight end room was one of the biggest question marks. And going into the draft, you thought the Saints were going to draft a quarterback, not knowing what was happening behind the scenes with Foster Moreau, and now obviously he gets great news over the weekend. And you look at this tight end room, Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, Taysom Hill, Jesse James, all these guys are completely different. It's a very unique tight end room. How do you think these guys will kind of be utilized? Like, could we see multiple tight ends in 11 personnel? Would it be Johnson with the first crack, maybe Foster in there as well? 12 personnel gets interesting. How do you think that their kind of roles kind of shape up as we enter training camp?
Yeah, I think you get to see a little bit more passing out of 12 personnel, but then you have and 12 personnel, of course, meaning one running back, 2 tight ends on the field, first number designated to the number of running backs, second number designated to the number of tight ends, then you fill in the rest with the wide receivers. But I think with that 12 personnel, with having those 2 tight ends on the field, that's usually a run-heavy set. You see NFL teams run out of that set, maybe 3/4 of the time or so is a pretty safe assumption. We could say over half of the time to be safe. But I think that New Orleans could probably get a little bit closer to half if that's the case. And that's something, if you remember right, that they wanted to do when they drafted Adam Troutman back in 2020. The first thing that Sean Payton said was, oh, well, now we can run a lot more 12 personnel, get some more of these tight ends out on the field, things like that. And so I think that, we saw a lot of that personnel group for the Saints last year. Some of it had to do with the fact that they barely had enough wide receivers after a certain point to put on the field. Some of it is about how do you count Taysom Hill in certain situations too. And so I think that maybe some of those numbers end up getting skewed in that way. But I do think naturally in 2023, we'll see a lot more of those 2 tight end sets. But even though you see those and they are majority run sets or run distributions or whatever, you'll probably see a lot more passing out of there, especially with the pass catchers that you have. They are all uniquely different types of tight ends, but it is funny how uniquely diverse or how uniquely versatile all of them are as well. And we have to add in Lucas Kroll. Talk about another guy that could potentially take a second-year leap. If he shows that he can block those C and D gaps over on the outside, Dennis Allen said that he's going to earn a lot of opportunities. And if he does that, you already know what he can do as a pass catcher.
Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the 2 guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.